and Gabby Williams were slow to get up after a collision underneath the basket. Here's what happened.
Well, that is a major collision for the two of them. They both knock heads. It took them both some time to get to their feet.
Great stuff. That's the most complete game we put together in a long time. We made more free throws than they attempted. Yo, hey, that is a difference maker for us, and that will be a difference maker for us. 22 assists on 36 made field goals. Total team effort.
AB, 1,000th career rebound. Best player in Fever history to do so.
Like these.
And Kels set a new franchise record for most points in a single season.
And what it meant seeing her fight through what sure was not very pleasant.
I feel like Lexie's the definition of tough.
Yes.
I think when you just think of her as a player, the way that she hustles, she likes to get loose balls, extra offensive possessions. That's what she does. I mean, she got hit, she came back and just continued to contribute again, was a pest on defense, just making her presence felt, offensive rebounds, and that's just who
on that play.
I didn't know exactly what happened when it happened. It was kind of just like a clash. But looking at the video, it just, Gabby and I ran into each other. Unlucky. I think we both have knots on our heads, so we both kept playing, so it's all right.
Were you pretty dazed when you...
Yeah, I think it's more of like what just happened, big like collision. I just need some time, felt my face, felt a growing knot.
The sound echoed through Gainbridge Fieldhouse like a gunshot. Two bodies colliding with such force that 17,000 fans held their breath in unison. Lexie Hull and Gabby Williams lay motionless on the hardwood, their heads having crashed together in a collision so brutal it made grown men wince. Everyone assumed Hull's night was over. Everyone was wrong. What happened next would redefine what it means to be Indiana Fever tough and send a terrifying message to every team in the WNBA playoffs. This wasn't supposed to be Indiana's night. Hell, this wasn't even supposed to be close. The Fever walked into their own arena as walking wounded, more resembling a MASH unit than a professional basketball team. Caitlin Clark, their superstar, their engine, their everything, sat courtside in street clothes, nursing a groin injury that had kept her sidelined since mid-July. 16 straight games without their franchise player. 16 games of trying to stay afloat while their season slowly drowned. But Clark was just the beginning of Indiana's nightmare injury report. Sophie Cunningham, gone for the season. Ari McDonald, season over. Sydney Carlson, done. Chloe Bibby limping around on bad knees, trying to hold together what was left of their guard rotation. This wasn't depth being tested. This was basketball survival at its most desperate. Their entire backcourt had been systematically dismantled by the injury gods, leaving them scrambling for answers that didn't exist on any roster sheet. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Indiana had stumbled through 4 losses in their last 5 games, watching their playoff dreams slip away one painful defeat at a time. They clung to the 8th and final playoff spot with white knuckles, their 19-18 record a cruel reminder of how thin the margin between postseason glory and summer vacation really was. Seattle Storm sat 2 spots higher in the standings, comfortable at 6th place, looking down at Indiana like vultures circling wounded prey. Every possession felt like life or death. Every missed shot was another step toward elimination. Every turnover brought them closer to watching the playoffs from their couches. The pressure was suffocating, the kind that breaks teams and ends careers. One more loss, one more collapse, and their season would be nothing but regret and what-ifs. And then there was the cruel irony of the night itself. Nike had transformed Gainbridge Fieldhouse into Caitlin Clark's personal shrine. Banners celebrating her new logo draped from every railing. Promotional shirts blanketed the stands. Fans lined up for hours just to take selfies with glowing backdrops featuring Clark's face. The entire arena had been redesigned as a monument to their missing superstar, a celebration of a player who couldn't even lace up her sneakers. Clark sat courtside, smiling and waving while her teammates...
Storm basketball. The new starters, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexie Hull, Second for the full.
Were left to fight for their playoff lives. The visual was almost cruel, a party for someone who couldn't participate while the rest of the team faced elimination basketball. It was like throwing a birthday party for someone who was trapped in another state. Beautiful, elaborate, and completely hollow without the guest of honor actually showing up to play. Most people in the building expected a bloodbath. How could this decimated Fever roster possibly compete with Seattle's veteran-laden squad? The Storm smelled weakness, and they came to Indianapolis ready to feast on Indiana's misery. The smart money was on a blowout. The realistic fans prepared for disappointment. Everyone assumed this would be the night Indiana's season finally died. That's when the impossible started happening in the first quarter. Hull and Williams dove for a loose ball under the basket, two players giving everything they had for one extra possession. The collision was catastrophic. Their heads collided with a sickening crack that silenced an entire arena. Both players crumpled to the floor like they'd been hit by lightning. Williams eventually made it to the bench, shaken but functional. Hull was different. She staggered toward the tunnel, clutching her forehead, blood trickling down her face. The camera zoomed in, capturing the grotesque swelling that was already beginning to form. A massive knot rose from her skull in real time, growing larger with every second. Fans at home turned away from their screens. This wasn't basketball anymore. It was a medical emergency. Hull disappeared into the locker room, and Indiana's season seemed to follow her down that tunnel. She wasn't their leading scorer or their biggest name, but she was their heartbeat. The player who dove for every loose ball, who guarded the other team's best perimeter threats, who brought an energy and intensity that held their makeshift lineups together. Without Hull, their defense would be tissue paper. Their chemistry would crumble. Their already slim chances would evaporate completely. The minutes crawled by like hours. Fans checked their phones, wondering if they'd see news about Hull being taken to a hospital. Teammates kept glancing toward the tunnel, hoping for any sign of their fallen warrior. The game continued, but everyone was waiting for the official word that would confirm what they all assumed. Hull was done for the night, maybe longer. Then the impossible happened. Hull emerged from the tunnel like a boxer refusing to stay down. The swelling was horrific, a purple-black, not protruding from her forehead, like a golf ball trying to escape from under her skin. She looked like she'd been in a car accident, but her eyes burned with determination, and her body language screamed defiance. She checked back into the game without hesitation, like she'd never left. On her very first possession back, Hull dove headfirst onto the hardwood, chasing another loose ball with the same reckless abandon that had gotten her hurt in the first place. The crowd erupted. 17,000 people jumped to their feet, roaring like they'd just witnessed a miracle. This wasn't just basketball anymore. This was gladiator-level courage. Hull later admitted she felt dizzy and disoriented after the collision, but her philosophy was simple and brutal. If I can play, I can play. It didn't matter how she looked. It didn't matter how much it hurt. Her team needed her, and that was the only consideration that mattered. This was warrior mentality in its purest form, the kind of toughness that legends are built on. The effect on her teammates was instantaneous and electric. If Hull could play with a golf ball growing out of her skull, what excuse did anyone else have for not giving everything they had? Her courage became contagious, spreading through the roster like wildfire. Suddenly, Indiana wasn't just trying to survive, they were trying to prove something. Aaliyah Boston felt the energy and decided to take over the paint like it was her personal property. 27 points and 9 rebounds later, she had turned the lane into a war zone. Every time Seattle tried to attack the basket, they ran into Boston's brick wall frame. She sealed defenders with her size, finished through contact, and grabbed rebounds like she was collecting souvenirs. The Storm's front court looked helpless, overwhelmed by her raw power and determination. The rebounding numbers were almost comical. Indiana demolished Seattle 42-21 on the glass, a margin you almost never see at the professional level. Every missed shot became an Indiana possession. Every loose ball found its way to a Fever player. Boston was the ringleader of this rebounding circus, but the entire team bought into the mentality that every ball belonged to them. Odyssey Sims, the mid-season addition who was supposed to provide steady veteran leadership, decided this was her coming out party. 22 points of pure aggression, attacking the rim like she was trying to tear it down. Her biggest moment came from the logo, a three-pointer so deep it had no business going in. Nothing but net. The arena exploded into chaos, and Sims strutted back down court like she owned the building. That shot was more than just 3 points. It was a declaration that this injury-ravaged roster wasn't going anywhere. Sims had been signed to provide depth, but she played like a superstar, fearless and confident in the biggest moments. Her pace and swagger infected the entire lineup, proving that sometimes the best players are the ones nobody sees coming. Kelsey Mitchell provided the perfect complement from the perimeter, dropping 21 points to keep Seattle's defense honest. Every time the Storm tried to collapse on Boston in the paint, Mitchell was there with a dagger three-pointer. Her steady hand and clutch shooting stretched the floor and created the space Boston needed to operate. Without Clark's trademark range, it was Mitchell who kept the offense balanced and dangerous. The tactical dominance was complete and overwhelming. Indiana held Seattle to just 3 fast break points the entire game, turning defense into offense with ruthless efficiency. They controlled the pace, dictated the tempo, and reduced the Storm to reactive basketball instead of their usual creative flow. This wasn't a team trying to survive anymore. This was a team imposing their will. When the final buzzer sounded, the scoreboard read 95-75, but the numbers didn't capture the complete destruction that had taken place. This wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. Indiana had swept Seattle 3-0 for the season, vaulted back into 6th place in the standings, and stolen the spotlight on a night that was supposed to belong to their absent superstar. The message was crystal clear and terrifying for every other team in the league. The Indiana Fever is so much more than Caitlin Clark. They had proven they could dominate without their franchise player, showing a depth of character and toughness that championship teams are built on. This was the night Indiana stopped being seen as Caitlin Clark plus 4 other players and started being recognized as a legitimate, dangerous basketball team. And here's the part that should have every team in the WNBA waking up in cold sweats. Caitlin Clark is coming back. She was spotted on the practice court for the first time since her injury, going through full team drills and live contact. After 16 games on the sidelines, the league's most dangerous weapon is almost ready to return. Coach Stephanie White made it clear that Clark needs multiple full practices before she's cleared for game action. But Friday's trip to Los Angeles is being circled as her likely comeback date. Imagine what just happened to Seattle, but with Caitlin Clark added to the mix. Boston's paint dominance with Clark pulling defenders out to the three-point line. Sims pushing the pace while Clark ignites transition attacks with her court vision. Mitchell's steady shooting complemented by Clark's unlimited range. Hull's defensive intensity protecting a player who can stretch defenses to their breaking point. If this battered, injury-depleted roster can demolish a playoff team, what happens when they're finally whole? The ceiling doesn't just rise, it disappears completely. Indiana went from fighting for their playoff lives to looking like a team that could flip the entire postseason bracket upside down. The timing couldn't be more perfect or more terrifying for their opponents. With only 6 games left in the regular season, every possession carries championship weight. The Fever have climbed back into the 6th seed, and with Clark's return imminent, they're not just sneaking into the playoffs anymore. They're building something that looks suspiciously like a dynasty in the making. This was the night everything changed for Indiana Fever basketball. Hull's warrior courage, Boston's paint dominance, Sims' fearless leadership, Mitchell's clutch shooting, a complete team performance that proved they don't need rescuing. They are the rescue. And when their superstar returns, the rest of the WNBA better ask themselves one simple, terrifying question. If Indiana's already this good injured, what happens when they're whole again?